I saw my mom, and she was just crying, you know. And I saw my dad, and it was the very first time in my entire life that I'd ever seen this man cry, you know. Very first time. And there was something about that situation that just broke me.
Welcome to another episode of the Powerless to Powerful Recovery podcast. My name's Jason. I'm an alcoholic and addict. As always, our mission is to share experience, strength, and hope across multiple media platforms, the story of addiction and the road to recovery. We're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous or any other 12-step based organizations or groups in any way, but we are back, and my co-host is back. Shout out, Ron, no matter what.
Hey.
Whoa. Hey.
It's been too long. It's been too long.
You all right, brother? It's been too long. I don't even think you've been on so many different trips, sightseeing, Kipu conventions, showing up for your family. You were in Beverly Hills last time. So real quick, before we introduce our special guest, you were in Beverly Hills for a Kipu conference last time we recorded. What was that like?
Oh, it was an amazing experience. Got to go out and represent Desert Recovery Centers and with our community partner, Kipu. It was just amazing. I had never been to Beverly Hills before, so it was a great experience. Got to talk about all the new upgrades that were happening for us in behavioral health. Was able to get a lot of great information that's going to help us moving forward as we continue to grow and help clients. And it's cool the boss let me go.
Yeah, I mean, I occasionally let him do certain things, but it's rare. But before we go any further, we have a special guest. And before I even introduce this special guest, I got to shout out Anthony Payne. Anthony, we're here, brother, because we have a special guest today. We have Zach Ponczak is here, the Director of Business Development for the Embers, PHP programming, IOP outpatient, some of the most amazing sober livings you're going to see, and an all-star member of the 12-step recovery community.
Let's go.
Welcome, Zach, to the show. What's up, Zach?
Whoop, 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 whoop. We are here. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jason, for having me. I am so excited to be here, and it is an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, when you start with the woo-hoo, when you start with that, brother, I mean, that gets me excited. Yeah. So just take a quick moment before we jump right into things. Just give our listeners, I know we've had Anthony on, the CEO of the Embers. We've had some other of the team members on, but today it's all about you. But ultimately, what this whole thing is about is spreading the messages of hope and finding the right opportunity in the right place and the right outcomes for all those men and women desperately in need of help, whether it's substance abuse or mental health. So just take a quick moment, just give us an overview of the Embers for our listeners all over the world, just so they can kind of get an idea of what business development is, what you do there, also the type of programming and levels of care that the Embers has.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Embers is a hyper luxury boutique, treatment center. We provide partial hospitalization as well as intensive outpatient. We have a very unique approach to our clinical programming. We utilize something called the FOSS framework, which you can actually find on our website, theemberstreatmentcenter.com.
Yes, check it out. And I'm curious to hear about that. Can you explain? Because we have something at Desert that we've rolled out recently due to the size of our clinical team, which is bridge work therapy. So can you share a little bit more about that, the therapy that you're talking about with your clinical team?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So kind of what the FOSS framework outlines is a salutogenic approach to health and therapy, right? And salutogenics is kind of the opposite of pathogenics, right? Pathogenics focuses on diseases and disorders in the sense that like it's kind of symptomology reduction, right? Salutogenics uses positive psychology to promote health and well-being through finding somebody's strengths and using evidence-based therapies to be able to strategically do so.
Ooh, I love it. And that's what I love. And we've been able to develop such a great working relationship, being as though at Desert, we have the residential component and you have the PHP, IOP, OP, sober living component. We've been able to coordinate care so well together because we're so like-minded on the clinical side of things. Absolutely. And Ron could speak a little bit more about that as well, being our clinical quarterback at DRC. But really, that's what it's about. Evidence-based treatment, tracking outcomes, quality improving, so we can give these clients, because remember, all staff members are client advocates, and we advocate through our documentation to get them the help they need. But 100%. Such a similar program, wouldn't you say, Ron?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking with Zach yesterday. I've been seeing Zach everywhere. We've been running into each other, and it's good to see him. Our clients that leave and go to Embers, we get such great response because what happens a lot of the time until we develop that relationship, we've been sending them some other places, and we get calls, or I see them in the recovery community, and they try to gauge their experience at Desert, right? That boutique experience. Your words you use, and that's what we do at Desert, along with the evidence base and the ancillary service, and we combine that all together with an amazing clinical team. And then they go to some other places that the approach is different, and they're not happy. They go to your guys' place, and it's an extension of what we're doing. It's not the same, it's different, but it's the same feel.
Yep.
They still get that evidence base, it's luxury, they get the one-on-one individual therapy, the men and women who really care. So, yeah, it's been a great relationship so far. I've been getting some good responses.
And we've been able to coordinate care so seamlessly, picking right up through the treatment plans.
Yeah.
And we always talk about this a lot, and I'm sure you probably heard it too, and your staff might say it a lot too, where they tell you that documentation is number one. And they say documentation is the most important part of the business, which we know that, and we agree with that, and we preach that, and everyone goes, yeah. But without that documentation, we can't advocate for our client. We can't show the amazing trauma work that we do. We can't show the amazing evidence-based treatment modalities that we're using, that tracking outcomes, quality improving, and ultimately being able to coordinate care to that next level. And the graduation after 60, 90, 120 days there, we're able to track all those things because the documentation is there to support it. The documentation
100%.
is everything. And that's what they say, right, Ron?
100%. I mean, there is no more important part of it, right? And you and I lately have been coordinating a lot on that because sending over documentation to you. And I haven't been over there yet. I can't wait to get over there and check it out for myself.
Absolutely.
But just by what you're asking for, I know what you're doing over there.
Yeah.
Right? And no, you're pretty much the only one that's ever asked us for that. No one else asked for that coming in,
Oh, wow.
So I was like right away, I had mentioned it to Jay, and I had mentioned it to actually our clinical director. I was like, yeah, they're doing some things over there because it's just you're starting off. You want to pick up where we left off. And the only way to do that is the documentation.
Yes,
Right.
that's it.
Exactly. 100%. I do believe that documentation is absolutely key. Utilizing that documentation and reviewing that documentation thoroughly is going to increase somebody's length of stay, give somebody the care that they need.
That's right.
ultimately.
Because we're client advocates, and we advocate them through our documentation. And just overall, just quick 101 of insurance. They think you're cured as soon as you come in, and they want to give us basically 6 days at a time to try. And we have to advocate through the documentation to fight for that client to get the time that they need. If I was in active addiction for 20 years, do I think 27 days in residential is the math doesn't check out. Not even prison math, Zach. Okay.
Definitely not.
No, so we have to advocate for them to get them the time they need, to get the help they need, so they can have the best chance to become the best versions of themselves again, so they don't want to change the way they feel, or ultimately, lead heavily back into mental health. And anytime we have a guest on the show, I always like to make sure we all know how we got here. And we've been working with you from a previous facility to now at the Embers, and really seeing you on a day-to-day basis, from recovery events to Department of Corrections events to daily at our treatment facilities, speaking to the clients.
Running groups
Running
a group.
He came in, he ran a group, because what's most important
Absolutely.
is the messaging for hopefully any treatment center or any especially residential level of care, definitely Desert, that when they show up to do their intake, this isn't their landing pad, this is their launching pad. So we're immediately talking about where we're going to go next, where we're going to coordinate that care, because Desert's just that beginning 30-day time period. So without amazing partners like yourself and the Embers and everything you guys do, coordinating care the right way, asking for the right things, documenting the right way, it gives us the best ability to help these clients have the greatest outcomes. So it's just been an amazing experience working with you guys, and we're glad we were able to get you on the show today.
Absolutely, 100%. And you were talking about that that launching pad, right? Embers is by no means a landing pad either. However, Embers is kind of that transition from, the inpatient experience, that aspect of stabilization, to where we can really, continue that stabilization process and step people down from level of care to level of care, so that they have the freedom and the agency to be able to take ownership over their recovery every single step of the way.
Yeah, to have ownership back in their life again. Then ultimately what makes Embers so nice is that you also do have that final phase, if they've been able to make it through all the steps and land in a nice sober living, in a supportive environment, in a community with culture in it. So it just gives them that best chance for success, and that's what we love the most. But most all of us didn't go to school to do this. We didn't, when we were in 6th grade and Miss Johnson came around the classroom and said, what do we want to be when we grow up? I don't think any of us raised our hand for behavioral health. I think we might have raised our hands maybe when they've asked those questions, maybe behind razor wire and incarcerations, when we realized that those prison sentences could be resume builders, right? And that God maybe had a purpose and passion and all these things for us this whole time. We just didn't do our part. And so your journey starts somewhere too. And so I want to take some time now really to get to know you, where your passion comes from, your shared experience, your lived experience, and where that heart is for this thing, because this is a 24/7, never ending, and you're on the front lines. You're in admissions, you're building a business, and you're also answering the phones. So you're talking to them when they're in crisis. You're talking to them with a 20-second window to get them in, right? And so leaning on our experience and knowing exactly how they felt making that first call, because we've all made that call so many times. So you were born in Colorado, right?
Correct.
Quickly?
Aurora, Colorado.
So why don't you share a little bit about Colorado, Texas, the family dynamic, just so we can kind of just know a little bit of history on the family and kind of what that period was like for you.
For sure. So took my first plane ride after birth at 6 weeks old, right? And that's because my dad, he works for the airlines, has worked for United Airlines for 37, 38 years
Shout
now.
out, Dad.
Absolutely. Shout out, Dad.
Yeah, big shout out.
100%. He is the man that I aspire to be.
Oh, dude. Respect.
Like, I didn't always feel that way, but now that I got a baby on the way, it is.
Congrats, Zach.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
thank you.
Dude,
Yeah,
congrats.
absolutely.
Boy or girl, do you know
Boy.
yet? Oh, yeah.
go.
Oh, yeah.
Dude,
100%.
Congrats.
So I'll touch on that here a little bit later after we, go through a little bit more of the history and stuff, But that being said, after I took that first plane ride, I started life really in Texas, Houston, Texas, in a little suburb called Friendswood. And that's where I met my first best friend. And I led very suburban, very very Christian kind of Texan evangelical Baptist type, type upbringing.
Church on Sundays, church Wednesday, Sunday, church Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, church Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. What are we talking?
I mean, we're talking church a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was that young, I don't remember exactly how much church was involved, church actually when it was, kind of after I got to Arizona, which I got to Arizona, landed in Paradise Valley in 1998, right? And I've been here ever since, This is kind of the place that I call home, even though I say it begrudgingly because, the heat is absolutely unbearable. I always tell people from out of town that we have 8 months out of the year that's absolute paradise and 4 months out of the year that makes you question whether paradise is worth it.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And so when you land in PV, you land in like nice PV?
I landed on like the border of PV, So it was the foothills of Shadow Mountain, right?
Okay, so
right over by Mercury
At some
Mine.
point you went to Shadow Mountain High School?
Yes, I did.
My brother graduated from there. That's why I asked.
Ah, gotcha.
My brother's 85. Yeah.
Shadow Mountain was kind of the place that was like my home base.
I'm going to ask you one question, and this will tell me everything I need to know. What you know about Uncle Sam's?
Oh, dude, Uncle Sam. Okay, so my favorite order from Uncle Sam's is suicide wings, extra crispy, extra wet, with no celery, no carrots, and no dressing on the side. 25.
Okay, you got your own order. Did you date any of the girls that worked there?
Yes, I did.
Okay, shout out, respect.
What is the Suicide Sam's we speak of?
It's just like one of the main restaurants that's like right there by the school and like all the
32nd Street and Shea.
Yeah, 32nd Street Appreciate you.
All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. It's southeast corner, right behind the 7-Eleven.
Hang out.
Yeah, it's a spot. Yeah.
Yep, 100%, 100%. I went there actually quite a bit of the time when I was in Little League. You know, we would finish up a game or something like that over at the Shadow Mountain Fields or at the Shea Middle School Fields, and we would go over to Uncle Sam's and we'd have pizza and wings, and I would mostly do wings,
Yeah.
you know, because I'm just a wing guy, and well, I love things as spicy as possible because ultimately I'm an addict and an alcoholic, and I take everything to the extreme.
There you go. And I can relate to that. Right? I can relate to that. And, you know, so really when we talk about just touching back quickly, the family dynamic, you know, your parents are still married. You have one sibling, you know, grew up in the church, had pretty much everything you could have wanted for. Would you describe it as such? And, you know, it was pretty normal childhood, would you say?
Very normal childhood.
Very normal childhood.
It wasn't necessarily that I had everything that I wanted. I had everything that I needed.
Okay. And then ultimately we start to transition into high school, and that's usually where it starts to shift a little bit, and drugs and alcohol come in. And I assume we're probably around the same age, and so during that time period was psychedelics and cocaine, and of course usually we start with alcohol, because I don't think any of us went to many sober parties in high school because it wouldn't be fun, right?
Right.
And so why don't you just share what high school was like in that 4 or 5 year time period of experimenting with drugs, consequences, but also you were an athlete. You played all the sports, baseball being number one.
Yep.
What position in baseball?
I was a pitcher.
Who do you like? Who's your baseball team? Who's your favorite baseball team?
You know, I was more of a baseball player than I was a baseball watcher, believe it or not. I do
who was
not
your favorite
really
player?
watch sports because I am so ADHD that I cannot sit through games unless I am playing the game.
Okay. All right. Who's your favorite player growing up?
Randy Johnson.
Randy Johnson. Okay. Pitcher.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
unit.
All right. So what was it like taking acid while playing baseball, if you've ever had the luxury of doing that? Because I know if you experimented in high school, those high school games come pretty quick after school.
Yep.
If you've experimented while during school, you might have had a game that night. But why don't you just share with experimenting and when you found alcohol and what that led to, and just kind of give all of our listeners just kind of an idea of that.
So the best way that I can describe my alcoholic journey is my very first time drinking alcohol, right? It was in Denver, Colorado, and I was visiting my cousin Rachel, my Aunt Debbie, and kind of like that whole portion of my family. And she and her boyfriend Hawk were both in high school at the time, and I was transitioning between middle school to high school. And they invited me to one of their high school kickbacks. And immediately when I arrived, I was asked, "Do you want a beer?" Right? And my immediate response was yes. No hesitation whatsoever, no fear of consequence, no nothing, right? And ultimately, one beer turned to 6 within 30 minutes. And I don't care.
That's pretty fast. 6 right off the rip for your first time drinking. I mean, what are we
Like
drinking?
I said,
What kind of beers,
I don't
dude?
care who you are.
Are we in Texas or are we in PV?
Oh,
Yeah.
Colorado.
Oh, we're in Colorado.
Colorado.
Oh, we're in Colorado.
Yeah.
Coors?
Coors?
Bud Light.
Bud Light. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was not fancy.
Okay.
It was not fancy, you know, like it was the dirt water.
How'd you
for
feel
sure.
after you slammed those 6 back to back?
Oh, I felt absolutely amazing.
Did you have all your clothes on?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
We're winning still.
I actually did.
Okay.
Mostly because it was so cold outside.
Okay, that's right,
You know,
Denver.
it was wintertime at the time, so you know. But
Did you have a hangover? Did you wake up sick? Because a lot of times because we have that addictive switch where we're just have one and it turns into 10 our first time, and usually we get so deathly sick and ill, and we wake up in the morning and we say we're never going to do that again as we're trying to figure out where everybody's going that night.
no. So kind of my experience was that I got back to my aunt's house with my cousin Rachel and her boyfriend Hawk. And after they literally pulled me out of the party because I did not want to stop drinking. I literally just wanted to keep drinking and keep drinking and keep drinking. That's what I wanted to do. And so obviously I was visibly intoxicated. And so I got the riot act when I got back to my aunt's house. And there was no remorse whatsoever. I literally just was like, this is how I want to feel. I just want my head to be changed in this way as much as possible from this point forward. And I didn't have the experience of, you know, the hangover or anything else like that. To this day, I have never experienced a hangover. And one thing that is very unique about my particular experience with drugs and alcohol is not only have I never had a hangover, but I've never experienced withdrawal symptoms, even after utilizing opiates and benzos for extended periods of time.
Wow, you're like a mutant, dude. Are you a Ninja Turtle, dude?
I have no idea
Michelangelo?
how that happened, but you know, it's like literally there was a period of time where
God,
I
it's the only
utilized
explanation.
Yeah, so there was a period of time where I utilized heroin for about 6 months, and that was like my primary drug. It was heroin and meth, right? And there was a point where I just wanted to stop. You know, I basically had to pass a drug test for whatever reason. I stopped for 7 days to be able to clear out my system. I was able to do so, and the most that I had was a headache and slight anxiety.
Not bad. I mean, that's not my experience. Lucky. You know, and so, you know, just back to that time period. So I really just want to touch on that because I think that's all where we really start is the experimentation component of it.
Right.
And what really happens, though, through experimentation is the deep attachment to drugs and alcohol with our emotions. So now good emotions and positive emotions, I need to get high in order to make them better or not to feel them. And then the consequences start to come, some big, some small, some over a period of time, even minor. I'm sure baseball starts to suffer. You know, I'm sure some of the friends start to change. You know, mom and dad being in the church and they start to see some of these changes in behavior, they start to be a little bit more upset. So the minor consequences start to come. And then ultimately we pass through there and we graduate from high school and we start to move on next. And so
never graduated.
Well, you tried. I didn't want to say it, but you tried.
The good old college try.
Yeah, a few times, more than 5, 10, maybe even more than that, right? But but the point is, it now was that transition where that time period, because time is so valuable and taking advantage of it and always looking back and thinking, what could have we done and what would we have done differently and would I have studied and would have I got better grades and what soccer scholarships could I have got? But the point is now here I am where those dreams have now become good ideas and now I'm on to a different path. And that path for you, I don't even know how to really feel about it, but he worked at a pawn shop. So I'm sure that Zach gave me $30 for everything that I ever brought in there. A flat screen TV, $30.
Did you ever buy any Beat headphones from Jay?
Probably.
Which pawn shop did you work at?
So I worked at Pawn First over at Metro Center. You know,
yeah.
that really big one, you know, with the choppers and the street bikes in the front
Resentment list,
windows.
pawn shops,
you know?
number one.
I also
No, that's Mo Money Pawn.
They did have windows.
That's
they
Mo
had a
Money
window.
Pawn.
Yeah, no, they had the big windows in the front, right? And they had the motorcycles. They had
24-hour
like
window.
cars, like in
Let me
there.
ask you this. Just I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let me ask you this: do they train you guys to give $30 for everything? Do they train you guys to look at us and be like, does he look like he's got a shit a softball? Is he 40 pounds underweight? And does he have a sweat mustache? If so, $30. Is that how it works? Talk to me, Zach.
So they actually leave it up to our discretion to a great degree. We're never actually trained on that, but we kind of get. We kind of get in. It kind of gets ingrained in our culture.
So that means I'm gonna have to add like 14 different people now to my resentment list instead of pawn shops, just in general.
Yeah. Well, actually, you were talking
Discretion.
about the drug progression and everything else, right? So after
How's that work? You're using drugs and you work in a pawn shop, so you know,
okay,
pick it up there.
so I went from spice. I went from spice to cocaine, to weed, and then hallucinogens and psychedelics. Right. So spice, the first time I did
like
that
crack.
was actually on my 18th birthday.
Spice is like crack.
Right. It's kind of like hallucinogenic weed. You know.
But you
like,
want
it's-
more as soon as you're done.
He's familiar.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, trust
No,
me, I
for
know.
sure.
Zach, I know, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. So did spice, and then I did cocaine at this car dealership that I worked at before the pawn shop, right? And after the car dealership, I went to work at the pawn shop. And when I was at the pawn shop, you were asking about, you know, the value of items and everything else like that. Well, I told you that we had great discretion. Well, here's the first time that I ever did acid. Right. You know, because that acid was a big portion of my story. Right. First time I ever did acid, there was this really cute, like super hot rave chick that ends up walking into the pawn shop. And when she comes in, she had all of this quite frankly, like bullshit, you know?
She's trying to pawn a diamond studded pacifier.
No. She was trying to pawn like these
sticks?
stamp plates. you know, like
yeah.
these arts and crafts type
Make
things.
shirts out front of the rave
and
to sell?
like, yeah, no, and like this candy maker, you know, to like, you know, and she's like, how much is this worth? And I'm like, it's not worth shit, but you know, and she's like, but like, I'm trying to buy some stuff like later at Whiteout, and I'm like, oh, you're going to Whiteout? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm going too. And she's like, okay, well, you know, I mean, if you want, I'll introduce you to my guy. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm down to meet your guy. And she's like, but I need a little bit of money for like, you know, for Lucy. And I'm like, okay, cool.
$30.
I got you. So freaking, I gave her like $80 for this shit that was worth like $5. You know what I'm saying? And she was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And needless to say, I ended up going to the rave later on, and I met the acid dealer. You know,
And what time period is this? Just throw a year out there.
like I was like 19, bro. So it was like 2012.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. So acid, I actually became an acid dealer at this point in time. And after I became an acid dealer, like that became like, as you know, a decent portion of my income. Started
Are you doing it every
experience-
other day? You got the little dropper. You're dropping maybe 5-10 hits in your eye. Are you dropping on sugar cubes?
Yeah,
You
so
got,
I
like-
did all of it, man. All of it.
I've been
Liquid,
around a little
tabs, gel, like all of it, man. And then I got like super into mushrooms. So just an example as to like how my addiction manifests. You know, like the most I ever did of acid was like a half thumbprint. And I hallucinated all the way across to the other side of the country. Started here, woke up in Georgia, you know.
So we're talking, that's what, 50?
No, like, so a thumbprint is,
100?
so a thumbprint is basically where you allow a full, like, 100 milliliter bottle.
Yeah, okay.
Or not 100 milliliter bottle, but a full milliliter.
To soak
right?
into your thumbprint.
To soak through your thumbprint,
Yeah.
right? And so I ended up doing the equivalent of about 250 hits, you know? So it was right about there, you know? And so that was absolutely crazy. Ended up, like I said, all the way across the country. There was also this time that I did mushrooms, right? And I ended up making 156 grams of mushrooms into a tea and drinking it over the course of 3 days.
Mushroom tea. I like the mushroom tea. You freeze it, you know, a little slushy, little mushroom tea. Some people can have a hard time eating those, but I have had some times on mushrooms.
Yeah.
For sure. Playing soccer, not playing soccer, camping trips, losing teammates in the forest who've
Right.
never taken them before. I am from the 96, 97, 98, 99 when you know, acid was, you know, everywhere, right? I mean, you know, same thing with Ron. And they used to tell you if you've done more than 10 hits, you were legally insane. So I think we're all past
I was legally insane like way before then.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Like mental health is a huge portion of my story, which is honestly one of the reasons why I really respect what you guys do over at Desert, and one of the reasons why, you know, I really like what we do over at Embers, because, you know, it's that dual diagnosis with the primary mental health capability. You know,
It's all mental health, and
Yeah.
it truly is. And so, you know, Ron, can you? I just want to back up 1 second, because you know we all have this unique experience with that first time that we drank, or that first time we used, or first time we took acid, or one of those first time periods. And what was that first time period like for you in New York when you first drank for the first time after a wrestling match at a party, and then from there it was you were. Just pick it up from there, just to share that experience in with that.
Yeah, you know, it was that feeling of acceptance. That's the best way I could frame it. You know, the first time I really drank, like when I was little, I still drink, you know, sips of beer from dad and grandpa. But in high school, as a freshman, on the wrestling team, going to my first real party,
right?
You know, I had a bag of ditchweed in my pocket that I scored from somewhere because I wanted to be accepted by the older guys, you know, the guys I looked up to. And I just remember, you know, when I drank for the first time, nothing mattered.
Right.
Nothing mattered. I fit in. I wasn't who I was. I could be whoever I wanted to be. I was able to talk. I was able to morph, have fun. Then I learned, you know, for me growing up, in high school. It was about, I come from a small high school, and we had our own little fight club, you know what I mean, where we drink on the weekends and fight each other.
Yeah.
And that was fun, and I was good at it because I could get beat up and not go down. I could take a good punch, and then someone would get tired, and I was a wrestler, and I'd take them down to the ground, and then I would drink more, and just that feeling of acceptance, and the consequences didn't matter. But for me, what I realized is when the party was over, there I am sitting on the hood of my car, and everybody's gone.
Right. And that's why I brought that up, because the same thing that you said, and that's the same thing I ask people all the time. If you were in high school and you were the kid that was up, pissed off that everybody else wanted to go to sleep, dude, you are one of us. I can promise you that, because I'm the only one that was pissed off, and I'm the only one that is a member of the 12-step community and my pack of friends, and so when that's the beginning catalyst for us, right? And we find an identity in that. Then as we now start to lean into character defects that come with our professions, our jobs, pawn shops, working in telemarketing offices, ultimately what we really want to do is we really want to party, and we want to figure out how to work, have all the things we want to do that's supposed to be normal, yet do all the selfish things that our disease requires, right? So then that becomes working in a shady telemarketing room. That becomes working at a pawn shop, but deciding that you can have your own little pawn shop on the side, working in a telemarketing, selling stolen property, stealing stolen property, like all these things. It's the progression truly of it. Baseball starts to suffer, dude. Now we're out of high school. That dream is, sports dreams are gone now, right? And now here you are, where you're doing a ton of acid, you're doing a ton of different mushrooms, you're developing connections, now you're selling dope, and then hitting raves at the same time with a direct line to drug addicts at the pawn shop. Right.
100%.
So how does that time period really start to work and play out?
I mean, that time period only lasted for like 14 months. Right. And then I got fired from the pawn shop, shortly after I got trained on grading diamonds, which actually ended up serving me very, very well later when I was chilling over at the dope houses, So that being said, after the pawn shop, I tried opening up a few of my own businesses, with varying success. Some of them were, very good endeavors, some of them not so good endeavors, and we'll just leave it at that.
Sure.
Right. That said, during that entire time, my progression took me from party drugs and hallucinogens to like the hard shit, started out with meth. That became my favorite, mixed in some heroin. Like I said, did heroin primarily there for a little bit. Then, cocaine, found out that you could put it in a needle, and that became my favorite.
Yes, you can.
And then fentanyl came out, right? And fentanyl was, crazy. And then I found out that you could put all four of them in the same syringe, and that was what me and a couple of my friends who, who used together, that's what they called a birthday cake. Because when you pull it all up separately, you can actually see the different layers in the needle, and it's just crazy. In any case, we'll kind of step away from that. But just to give you an idea as to how
we
hardcore,
relate. That's how, it's trying to die. It's
exactly.
called trying to die. Especially fentanyl. We're not talking about, fentanyl patches and fentanyl slugs. We're talking about fentanyl, right? Like off the street,
we're talking like
pills, right?
We're talking, no, not pills.
Powder?
Powder, before the pills even came out.
So okay, I'm just trying to gauge the time period.
So one of my biggest points of trauma that I have actually had the opportunity to work through, going through treatment, going through, counseling, therapy, everything else like that. And it was actually a really big portion of my story, in terms of, kind of turning me around, was that at the beginning of my very last run, right, there was this girl, we'll call her Erica. That's not her real name, but, we'll just call her Erica. And she hits me up and she's like, hey, do you want to hang out? And she's like this cute little street girl. So I'm like totally down, totally about it. Right. And so, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And she's like, okay, well, I'm in the bando, in Sunny
I'm in the
Slope.
bando and the slope.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And, for our Arizona listeners, we all know exactly where that's at. You know what I'm saying?
Top of the mountain and the slope.
Yeah, pretty much. So, the bando and the slope, I end up going there and she's like, hey, so, all my friends are sick too. And I'm like, okay, well, just so happens that I picked up on some really badass East Coast China White, and, you know, and a whole bunch of supplies, and we should be good. So I end up fixing up. So it was her and 10 others. So with me, it made 12, right? And so I made up identical, identical shots. And basically, like, we all, took our dose.
Straight fentanyl or birthday cake?
Straight fentanyl,
Okay.
right? I didn't know it was fentanyl. I didn't know it was fentanyl at the time.
Right.
And we all took the same dose, and I was the only one who woke up.
Yeah. And that's how heavy this shit is.
Yep,
and that's
exactly.
how serious this is.
So I was the one who called the cops and, and everything else like that. Because it was just a whole bunch of dope heads, I don't even think it made the news, which is absolutely crazy to me, because the thing is like, dope heads, like, are people too, And even though everyone expects us to die, including ourselves, like, our lives still matter,
And the thing is, if they put that on the news every night, there wouldn't be any time for anything else, dude.
Yeah.
And that's how serious it is. They seized millions of carfentanil pills. That is the fentanyl they use for elephants.
Yep.
And that's what they're putting in these pills now. I mean, every 4 minutes, someone's dying, dude.
Yeah.
And so you think about those moments, dude, and when before we find recovery, and we think about that and the survivor's remorse and the why and the this, and what it makes for is more drinking and more using, because it's the guilt,
Right.
it's the shame, it's the embarrassment, it's the remorse, it's the regret. It's till we can find the ability to find recovery and find this you, and then now use that experience now to help as many damn people as you could, and
Right.
as many damn people as you possibly can. Because every 4 minutes someone's dying from a fentanyl overdose in this country, dude, and the Narcan isn't even working anymore.
No, it's not.
Yeah, there was a guy that relapsed. They had him on a Narcan drip. Ron can share about that for a quick second.
Yeah, unbelievable. It was actually a family member, right?
Yeah.
It was a family member, and I had never heard of anything like this. He had so much carfentanil in his system. They Narcaned him and got him back, a lot of Narcan. And then once they got him to the hospital, they didn't know what was happening because he kept ODing. Like, this happened over a 5 hour period of time. They had to put him on a Narcan drip. It's the first time the hospital in Casa Grande ever had to do that. It's, they're figuring it out too. This thing is wild, and I just couldn't believe it. Like, a Narcan drip, and this poor young man and he didn't even know he was getting fentanyl. It was cocaine. He bought cocaine, and in the cocaine was this carfentanil, and he's still not right from it. It's been a couple months, and he's still suffering some. Thank God he's still alive. But that's how serious and dangerous and deadly this thing has become. It's not like back in the day in AA when you used to say, well, if you're not done, go out and try some experimental using and let us know how that works out. I don't say that to guys anymore. No way. Like, just stay. Just stay and let's work through this, because it's too dangerous. You don't know. Even the marijuana's if you're not getting marijuana from the dispensaries, marijuana's even getting laced with it. That's what's happening back in the East Coast. My mom's telling me it's popping up in Rochester, New York. Marijuana with fentanyl on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's those periods of pain, though, dude, that we feel, and that shame that really just it digs us and drives us ultimately into the gift of pain and desperation. That moment right there, coupled with doing meth for 28 days, staying up straight, and that's where I want you to pick it up, because that's really where the hope starts to come in, where you find recovery and this purpose and this passion and this professional path coupled with your recovery journey. And so why don't you pick it up there, that gift of pain and desperation, being up for way too many days, everything of that probably floating around in your mind as well, and just that whole period of what you felt like, what ultimately brought you to SRC, that really began this whole new you and this constant never-ending growth journey that you're on.
Absolutely. So can definitely speak to that. Dang, how do I want to speak to it? So that pain and desperation that I felt at the time was just so acute, Like, I didn't know what else to do. I had never even considered getting sober. I always knew that I was an addict and an alcoholic from the very first time that I used, from the very first time that I drank. I knew it. And I was willing to admit it, and I called myself that all the time. I just didn't think that there was any kind of a solution out there, you know, as I didn't even know that there was treatment. The closest thing that I thought about treatment was the whole Passages Malibu commercial, you know. I once was an addict, and now I'm not, you know. And so that being said, I was like, you know, like that could be cool, you know, but at the same time, like, I don't want to be anything other than an addict. Like, that's what I am. That's who I am. You know, that's how I identify. And after that whole like multiple overdose thing happened, you know, I didn't know how to deal with that. So I did go on a run. It lasted for about 28 days. And the last 3 days of that run, I blacked out and I ended up at my parents' house. I still have no idea how I got into the house. But at the same time, it was there that I woke up after sleeping for 3 days straight. It was there that I had my moment of clarity, you know, and my moment of clarity came when I ultimately looked my parents in the face after having come out of the hallway, you know, and into the living room. And I saw my mom and she was just crying, you know, and I saw my dad, and it was the very first time in my entire life that I'd ever seen this man cry. You know, very first time. And there was something about that situation that just broke me, you know. And I had the drugs out of my system for just long enough that, you know, like, I was able to just say, I think I need some help.
The hardest words there is to say.
Yep. And then my mom started crying harder. My dad actually stopped crying for a little bit. And they went to work for me, you know? And ultimately, they were the ones who found my first treatment center. They were the ones who called around. They were the ones who did the research. I just wasn't in the state of mind to be able to do so. I also knew absolutely nothing walking into, you know, treatment or recovery or anything else like that. And knowing absolutely nothing, I wouldn't have even known where to start. You know, my parents had actually been doing a little bit of research on the side on the maybe kind of sort of possibly probably chance that maybe I would say something along those lines at some point in time or another, right? So they had a little bit better idea than I did, and they ultimately found Scottsdale Recovery Center. Whoop, whoop, Scottsdale Recovery Center.
Shout out to SRC.
Absolutely, and particular shout out to Mr. Lee Yiva. That man has saved my life on more than one occasion.
Yes, shout out him.
Absolutely, 100%. In any case, SRC was at first, you know, very difficult for me. I was very far from a perfect client. You know, I'll save the details of that, but you know, needless to say, I caused some wreckage, I caused some chaos, and I was not a perfect client. Right.
Most aren't.
Yeah. Well, no. Like I said, you know.
Another show, another time, brother.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. You know, but going into those stories.
You graduated, like, right? You graduated?
You know, so here's the thing. I was kicked out after 20 days. Right. But at the same time, like in their system, it said graduated. Right. So I didn't get a certificate or anything, but so I don't really know. Like, did I get kicked out? Did I graduate? I don't know. But
so you weren't a model client, but you weren't an ass enough to get, you know.
Yeah. So okay. You know,
graduated. Okay. Then we moved. Then the next phase.
Yeah. So the next phase was that I went to a place called Viewpoint Recovery up in Prescott. Mm-hmm. Essentially, it's a PHP IOP for crazy people, right? Their lengths of stay are, you know, anywhere from like 4 months to 2.5 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I did not think that I belonged there, but later finding out that I was in a 6-month-long meth psychosis mixed with a bipolar 1 manic episode that lasted for about as long. Yeah, I definitely belonged there. You know?
Just maybe a little bit.
Yeah. Just,
But what also happened though there too is they introduced you to a sponsor and they introduced you to the steps, right? Was it there where you began to?
My first introduction to a sponsor was that I was sitting next to this other client. His name was Zach, right? Also Zach, right?
Zach.
Yep, exactly, right? And that was one of the only reasons why I sat next to him, because, you know, us Zachs, we have like a little bit of a bond. There's never a Zach that I've met that I didn't like.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
okay.
saying? So I'm sitting next to this kid, and I'm not paying attention to the meeting that we were in at all. And he just says, "Hey, man, raise your hand." And I'm like, "What do you mean raise my hand?" And he's like, "You might win something." And I'm like, "Poof, that's me right here. I want to win something." And needless to say, I didn't really win anything per se. But there was this weird guy named Joey who came up to me. He like looked like a bodybuilder, and you know, he kind of talked like this. He's like, "Hey, man, you need a sponsor?" And I'm like, "No." Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Okay, well, let me give you my number just in case." So he gave me the number, and then, you know, he walked over, you know, and then he was walking over the trash, and then I was walking over the trash can to throw it away. And lo and behold, this guy that I know, Steve, I don't know if he wants me to shout him out, but, you know, Steve, if you're watching this, you know who you are, you know, like, yeah. Anyways, so Steve, he ends up grabbing it out of my hand, and he's like, "Hey, I know who you're calling tonight." And that was my first introduction to a sponsor ever. You know,
the dude Joey became your sponsor.
he did. He took me through step 3, and then he ultimately ended up working at my treatment center, wasn't able to sponsor me anymore. Right. And he gave me over to his best friend, who was also named Joey. Right. And they were best friends, roommates, whole 9 yards. And he was the one who ended up taking me all the way through the 12 steps. Right. During the time that I was there. And then I ended up trying to AMA from Viewpoint. Unsuccessfully, but they did transfer me to the Scottsdale location when they still had that. And I stayed there for a little bit. And that was actually the first time that I started making some real progress, you know. But then we found out that my insurance ran out. And, you know, it was time for me to move on. Right. So ended up moving on with a non-completion. And I went to Tempe Valley Hope. Right. And I ended up having this counselor, therapist named Rose. And Rose was absolutely phenomenal because she saw my future before I did, right?
She believed in you before you could believe in yourself.
Well, I don't know if she believed in me. She definitely believed something. But she was like, "You need to go to sober living." And I'm like, "Nah. I don't need to go sober living." And she's like, "No, you need to go sober living." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm good." I was living with my buddy Riley at the time, and Riley was the one who, oh yeah, we breezed over this. So Riley was the one who gave me acid and mushrooms to go into treatment on. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that was where I thought I had my first spiritual experience, right? Quote unquote.
Maybe you did.
Maybe I did, maybe I didn't.
Yeah.
Who the heck knows, right? But yeah, so I went to go live with my homie Riley. And Riley, he was like, "Dude, I'll let you stay here. You can get a job, like all of that, this, that, and the other. You can have the room for free." And I'm like, "Okay, dope. This is the setup for me." And then I started selling dope. I didn't go to meetings. I didn't get a sponsor. I didn't do, anything along those lines.
You're supposed to do.
Right. And I had the closest thing to a relapse that you can possibly get. Like literally, like, it came the opportunity for me to be able to sell my drug of choice, which is meth, right? And I took that opportunity. I sold some of it. I had a lot left. And then the addict in me kicked in. I put it in a syringe. I put the syringe in my arm. And then for the first time in my life, I got scared. There was something different about that time, right? And it wasn't that I was scared of like overamping. It wasn't,
Wasn't the amount.
it wasn't the amount. It wasn't that. It was thinking that maybe I had made some progress, and I didn't want to lose it.
Yeah. Yep.
So there was finally something about my life that I cared about losing.
You finally had some purpose.
Yep. And so I went back to Rose and I was like, hey, you're right.
Sober living.
This is what ended up happening. And, ultimately I told her how I like ripped the needle out of my arm, and I was like as close to relapsing as you can possibly get. And I emptied the syringe. I threw that away. I, flushed all of the stuff that I had, got rid of the pills that I had, got rid of everything that I was selling. And I actually packed up my stuff and I took it to Tempe Valley Hope that day. And I'm like, and it's like 9 at night, right?
In your bed now.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, I need to go now, and she's like, okay. And Tempe Valley Hope actually scholarshiped me.
Respect.
Right?
Yeah. I love it, dude.
God loves that.
God loves it. I mean, that's
Yep.
what we're here to do. If you're a member of the recovery community and I'm just thinking of just all of your experiences and everything that you're sharing, and I'm just relating it as to why you've been so successful in this industry as a professional, because you know what it's like when that insurance runs out, right? You know what it's like to try it your own way and only do one of the levels and not do sober living. You know what it's like to work from all different phases, and you've seen it and you personally know it in your own journey. So you're actually giving them the steps in the same playbook that you've went through. And that's what makes professionals in this industry so valuable and so successful. But ultimately it all started from you redoubling your efforts and getting back into the book and working the steps and getting the sponsor and hitting the service commitments, sponsoring guys, because you go on the next time period while making your professional ascension into the industry, as well as the fundamentals with, sponsorship and recovery.
Absolutely. So we'll touch on that like really super quick. Service was a huge part of my program for a really long period of time, and it's really evolved, where like, it's been in the book was a huge part, service was a huge part, sponsoring dudes was a huge part, and really what I relate this back to is a formula of success, right? And I tell my sponsees about that all the time, and like the formula of success, it changes over time. You evolve with it, but ultimately it's the different components of what you do for your own recovery that end up making you successful, right? Mm-hmm. So that said, I had to figure out my own formula of success, and I found out that it was, that very common, but I also had my own custom way of doing it, mixture of sponsoring dudes, being in the book, being of service, like I've held a bunch of different, exactly, positions. Convention committees, board of, board, like managing board of a couple of different fellowship halls, pretty much everything, every single service commitment at every single level, like I've either had, held, or aspire to, right? And, it's because service is a really big portion of my story. And that's actually kind of what led me into the industry was that, my very first, I guess, position, it wasn't necessarily an employed position. It was my sober living, brought me on as a house manager after just 1 month of being there.
Yeah,
right.
Well, I mean, look, and what they see they're going to take a look and they're going to see who they got, and you were the best candidate and best. And listen, any slips,
I was the lesser of the evils.
Listen, any
at
slips, and listen, that's just what I tell anyone. Nothing that you've done, slips, lapses in behavior, none of that shit for anybody. None of that changes any of the work that any of us have ever put in down the road. All the groups we've been a part of, all the progress that we made, none of that goes away, right? What it just means is we've left something unturned that we need to make sure we're aware of before it leads to us actually acting in that behavior. It's all a learning opportunity if we're doing it right, man.
Right.
And so what most people saw and what we see and what we get to experience working with you is your ability to connect with others, utilize your experience to do so, and your overall heart leading people into this industry to get the help that they need. And so you kind of learn this industry like we learned this industry as BHTs, overnight BHTs from the ground up. you've learned this industry the same type of way, man, from the house manager all the way up to director of business development.
Yep.
So I'd like to take the last few minutes of the show just to kind of talk about that professional ascension, because you're pulling different pieces of experience from Carla Vista to Pathfinders to Springboard, being house managers there, ultimately getting into the case manager BHT component with Emerald Isle, Buena Vista, following back with them. But really it starts to take a turn into BD. And can you share that with like Pinnacle and Buena Vista and Bumblebee and Saguaro, right? Mm-hmm. But if you can just man, I really love to hear about that, because when people come into this industry, the last thing I want them to aspire to be is just a BHT. Because if you're in this community and a member of the recovery community and you're working in behavioral health, staying at a BHT is going to be very difficult for you to have all the things that you want, right? So we want to help you to become a professional in this industry and ascend the professional ladder so you can pursue your passion and also have some financial stability at the same time. And it's very hard to do in this lane. Usually we got to sacrifice one or the other. Yep. And so that's what the Embers, that's what Desert's been able to do, is to find a lane where we can give the opportunity for our staff to have both. But it took you a while to find that. So can you just share your professional ascension and where we are today at the Embers?
So after all of that experience, all the way up to, you mentioned Pinnacle Peak, right? Because you're spot on with all of that. I actually discovered that my true passion in the industry lies with resource acquisition, resource connection, strategic partnerships, and first touch. Right? And what I mean by first touch is being, somebody's first resource, that first aspect of first contact, of first communication, whether I talk to somebody or not. Like if somebody reaches into the hemisphere of the Embers or wherever it is that I'm at, hopefully the Embers for like the absolute forever end of time, right? I love just knowing that wherever they end up going, I've been able to impact somebody's life in just that way, and be able to get them the help that they need, whether I talk to them or not. Because there's some times where like leads come through admissions and, they're not appropriate for our level of care, or, aren't appropriate for our facility. And it's my job to make sure that they get to where they're going. And I'm that first touch on their file. Right. And then there's other times where, somebody calls me directly, or somebody, hits me up and is like, hey, I need help. And they are a good fit. And I'm able to, be that first conversation. Right. And so ultimately that started at Buena Vista. They poached me back from Pinnacle Peak to be able to, kind of promote me into that position. They're like, hey, while you were with us, we realize that this is kind of what you were aspiring to. Now the position is open and we want you to come back, and they offered me a significant raise to be able to do so. And I'm like, all right, well, all of the negative that I've experienced in this corporate structure, I can overlook now. So, let's actually make this a thing, because their program overall is something that I really, truly believe in.
I think Buena Vista has a great program over
Absolutely,
there. I have a ton of respect.
they do.
My brother, I took my brother there. So
Yeah, 100%. So, but ultimately all good things can't last, right? Or all good things come to an end. And so did Buena Vista, right? Did so after about 6-7-ish months. I was successful all the way through, just, changing leadership, ended up changing my own professional direction. And then I went to Bumblebee Health, where I kind of did like a little bit of SaaS sales type business development type, connecting them with, different contacts and facilities, here in the Valley. During that time, I actually started consulting in like revenue cycle and billing and coding. That was actually an additional service that they offered to a few of their people while I was working with them. And then ultimately I was poached by Recovery Syndicate, and they wanted to bring me on to, to do business development with them, and, really love their program as well. Shout out to Recovery Syndicate.
Shout out to those guys.
Absolutely. Love their program as well. But ultimately, I just felt like I needed to do my own thing for a little bit. There was an opportunity that an old business partner of mine presented to me, and ultimately it didn't pan out. So after that, I just started private consulting. Revenue cycle, billing, coding, all of that, business development, and ultimately that ended up taking me through quite a few facilities until I landed at Cornerstone. Right.
Yeah. Big shout out to Cornerstone.
Absolutely. Big shout out to Cornerstone. 100%.
Estel, all the guys over there.
Absolutely. Phenomenal program. And yeah, that's ultimately the program where, I was able to
now here.
Yep.
Too.
Exactly. It was kind of my jumping off place to where I'm at right now. And Cornerstone is ultimately where we were able to start, really finding some synergy to work together. And we were able to find a very, very, good way to be able to benefit, the clients.
Communicate and to coordinate directly together. And what I love the most, Zach, is, when you use that as a catalyst now for the next phase of your professional growth, now over at the Embers. But before you left over there, you wanted to make sure Cornerstone, their reps, our relationship with them, you wanted to make sure everything was solidified, set in stone. You had us all sit down for lunch together so we can make sure that all of our relationships, the synergy was still there, even with you moving to a new location.
100%.
And being in the different demographics of Cornerstone now to the Embers, it's just been able to work out great because it doesn't affect our relationship with Cornerstone, and it solidifies even more so the amazing relationship we have with the Embers, which is directly like-minded. So respect to the way you exited that, and we're able to now make this next transition and immediately starting to spend time. I mean, Ron, how many times have you seen Zach over speaking to the clients, doing a group, coordinating care, picking them up? Anthony came by and dropped off a vape for one of your guys' clients. I know you've came by and dropped off, multiple things.
I've seen him every day this week.
Yeah. Pretty much, right?
I love it, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Because
100%.
working in recovery is a team sport. When you find your team, you got to surround yourself with a team. So if anyone is out there that's desperately in need of substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, whether it's PHP, IOP, whether it's sober living at the highest scale, whatever that might look like, help, resident, it doesn't matter. If you need help and this podcast and Zach's message touched you, please reach out to the Embers. Where can they find you if they want to reach directly out to you? They want to hear about your program. They want to get into your program. They want to meet you. How can they get in touch with you?
I want everybody to reach out to me directly. I am 100% available essentially as long as I'm awake, right? So that's basically like 3 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single day, right? And you can reach me at 602-291-6582. And my email address is Zach, spelled Z-A-C, Zulu Alpha Charlie, at Embers, E-M-B-E-R-S, recovery.com. You can also find us online for pictures, for a description of the FOSS framework that I mentioned earlier, for the description of the salutogenic approach, positive psychology, our sober livings. Everything else like that can be found on our website, which is emberstreatmentcenter.com, all spelled exactly as it sounds.
All right, and you can reach out to him. We'll be dropping all the links. Everything will be production will be all over this. And if you want to reach out to Desert Recovery Centers, where can they find us, Ron? Desert
Recovery Centers Instagram, of course. That page is just blown up. There's so many cool new additions to it. I love it. It's what I do first thing in the morning is see what's new on there. So you got desertrecoverycenters.com on IG, Facebook. Ronnie, no matter what, on TikTok, you can always look up Powerless to Powerful, Jason and Sarah. There's so many ways to reach us. Please reach out to one of us if you're struggling. We're here for you. I do just want to say this in closing. When you were talking, I seen the emotion in your eyes. I could feel it. Zach, and I heard you say this, and I need you to know this. It was on my heart to tell you this. You matter, and you're valuable. And you touch so many people's lives. I can just see it. I can hear it in your voice and see it in your eyes, how much you care. Well done. Well done, Zach.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Keep it up, man. We look forward to seeing where we're going to go together, how many people we're going to help, and continue to do it the right way. So if anyone's desperately needed help, it doesn't matter your financial situation, doesn't matter where you live, where you're at right now. We don't care about that. If you want help, we will not stop until we find you the help that you need. So please reach out, desertrecoverycenters.com. Adam Leonard, the hardest working business development rep. Sorry, Zach. The hardest working business development rep in the game. Shout out Adam Leonard and the whole entire team. Shout out the studios over here at Striventa, Matt and the marketing team, DRC. We're here. And again, please reach out. We want to help you. Tune in. New episodes dropping every other week.